Hey there, and welcome to the Uke Stuff channel. I am going to be answering a question today from this video. A person posted a question here on YouTube and asked about this instrument, so I want to make sure that I answer that. There are a couple other things I want to point out. First of all, for the first time I have a heater running down here with me, and because this room gets very cold in the winter. I live near Minnesota, in Wisconsin, almost into Minnesota where I teach, and so therefore if you hear a background noise, that's what it is. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out, so I'm going to try that for the videos that record tonight, and we'll see what happens. The other thing I just want to point out is I'm wearing my 2020 t-shirt. If you like it, they are available in the merch store with all seriousness, teespring.com. There's a link below in the description. I don't really actually make these to sell. I just make them so that I have some of my own gear to wear in videos and to wear around, which is kind of fun. But if you like it, I know a couple of people have bought it. It's talking about the year of the Hawaiian D7, 2020. So let's get to the question. The question about this instrument was simply this: but does it stay in tune? Now, on a very funny note, I just happened to be reading through Facebook today, and Barry Maz at Gotoh Ukulele a while ago answered this question as well. So, and as I read through his response, most of it was what I would say to you, so I will definitely link below also to Barry's post on that subject. But here's what I have to say, is ultimately most ukuleles should stay in tune after their strings have stretched. Now, there is one exception to that, and I'm going to pull it out here. If you have friction tuners, my Magic Fluke has friction tuners. What happens with friction tuners is that they're held tight with friction. I guess it makes sense. That's why we call it a friction tuner. And if you tighten the screw a little bit, it makes it harder to turn. So if the strings slip, which they can, ultimately you can tighten that screw and they'll hold. Now, with all sincerity, a lot of people replace these on the Magic Flukes because they can be a little bit more fiddly. They work. They've worked in fact, the first ukuleles had friction tuners, but that doesn't mean the technology hasn't advanced. And almost any ukulele you buy today will hold its tuning once the strings have stretched. Now, there are exceptions to that too. So we have moved to, with the Luna, geared tuners, whether they're closed or not. And quite simply, if these are doing their job and they're holding, there's no way for the string to slip. It will continue to stretch and go out of tune. That's why you should tune your ukulele every time you play it, sometimes multiple times in a set. But those geared tuners work pretty much flawlessly, whether they're cheap or expensive. Now, the more expensive ones work much nicer, but nonetheless, these on the Luna are just fine, and they tune freely, and they will hold it in tune. Now, I'm going to give you an example of an instrument that I had to work on. This is my Sawtooth Pineapple, and the original tuners on here were so bad that actually, as I tuned it, hardware fell off. Like these screws in here fell off. And that can happen too. That's why you want to buy something like the Music Nomad 8-in-1 tuner, or 8-in-1 tool that you can use to tighten screws with when you do a string change and things. But they were awful. They were awful tuners. You can buy other tuners, whether on eBay or others. These are a much higher rated Grover tuner. So this ukulele that was originally, I think, $19, easily doubled in price with the replacement of those. Got them for super cheap, though, from someone on one of the forums because I was looking for some and people swapped them out. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. Even if you have something like friction tuners, you can do other work on them. So here's my little Martin S1. Love this little thing. Very, very classic. But it does not have the original friction tuners. It has what are called UPTs. Believe it's Universal Planetary Tuners. Not sure about the U necessarily, but anyway, these kind of function like a friction tuner, much faster turning, but smooth, and they lock and they don't loosen up on you. If you do, you just tighten the screw just a touch and it will never loosen again. These are a major upgrade. They're about $60 a set, and you're not going to stick them on any old cheap ukulele. You're going to want to make sure that it's something that's worth something. So ultimately, if your ukulele just doesn't have faulty tuners like this one did, it will stay in tune once the strings stretch. Now, a couple other things. I like the Martin fluorocarbon strings, or fluorocarbons of pretty much any kind. I also like the Aquila sugar strings. Also, the Aquila super nylgats that are used by so many manufacturers. All these strings, the Martins and those sugar strings and the super nylgats, they tend to stretch out pretty quickly. Now, there are people that are going to talk about how to stretch out a string when you're putting it on, pulling it up, doing other things, some people getting a pencil. My thought is you play it, you tune it a little sharp, get in tune a little sharp, play it, tune a little sharp, play it, turn a little sharp until it starts to hold, and then you can finally settle in. For me, that's about 30 minutes of playing, up and down the neck, having fun with it, to change strings. There are strings, though, that do not do very well in terms of holding a tune. They keep stretching for a long time. And in fact, there was a time in history not too long ago when ukuleles were sent with very, very cheap nylon strings. And that's not to say that all nylon strings are bad. And in fact, super nylgut, part of the formula is nylon. But what happened on those super cheap strings is that they would just stretch and stretch and stretch, and then when they stopped stretching, they just kind of become lifeless. So when Aquila introduced the new nylguts and then later the super nylguts, they changed the industry with a string that worked okay on all ukuleles, really did, and it went in a tune and lasted a lot longer than the strings that used to come with ukuleles. So it became a sort of a badge of honor of companies to sell Aquila super nylguts with their ukuleles because they worked and they held their tuning and they lasted a long time. Well, in the last year or so, I've seen companies moving to now shipping with the Dario. Of course, the big K brands have always shipped with their own strings. So Kamaka has their own black strings. Koloha uses their own strings. Kanalea ships with their own. So that's a little different. And then some people even will use fluorocarbon fishing line. I'm not going to go into that for this review right now. But ultimately, part of the reason and I've got right now, I think to count is I'm not proud of it. I'm up to 47 ukuleles. Not intended, and many of them were bargain basement ukuleles. They were free or they were gifts. I only have a few, like I would count like my Martin, that are really, really considered to be super nice ukuleles. Of these, when I'm putting fluorocarbon strings on that stretch quickly, settle in quickly, and tuning systems work, there are no problems with that. Now, intonation up and down a fretboard is a completely different issue. Okay, again, in summary of this entire discussion, the question was about the Luna. Does it hold its tuning? The answer is yes, while I'm playing it. While it's stored, the strings naturally stretch a little bit and need to be tuned again, but it holds its tuning. The tuners are like most modern tuners. They hold, and my choice of strings in particular, stretch to hold their tuning faster than some others. So yes, it does. Reminder that there are other types of tuning heads, such as friction tuners, that need to be tightened on occasion if they start slipping. You can upgrade those to other options like these UPTs, or you can even replace the tuners altogether like I did on my Sawtooth. Pulling out the Sawtooth now, like you can put on different tuners altogether, but again, sometimes you can double the price of your ukulele doing so, or add substantially to the cost, especially if you do something like the UPTs. Well, I hope that helps. It's a pretty long video to record to answer just a simple question, but I wanted to make sure that I covered it correctly. And again, check out Barry Maz's comments too on his thoughts. I would think that he'd agree with me with most things, but everybody has different opinions, and it's worthwhile getting a couple that are out there. So thanks for watching the channel, and we'll be back to you soon with some more content.